on a Zoom meeting, or so I'm going to be a little bit more personal than I've ever been in a Zoom meeting, let alone, in person. So some of you may know that I'm originally from the Netherlands, and that I grew up in a family that was Catholic. So I grew up a very pious Catholic. Whole family was Catholic. I never met another Jew, not another Jew, I should say. I never met a Jew until I was 19 years old, because I lived in a small town outside of The Hague. Everybody was Protestant, and then there were a few of us who were Catholics, and we were the minority. We were often bullied as kids because we were the minority. One day, my mother had told me, I was around 11 or 12, here, these books on these bookshelves, don't read them. They're not suitable for you until you're at least like 15, 16. So of course, if you tell a teenager that, it's like an invitation to run out and read them anyway. And one of those books, I was fascinated by it. And I got to the point where, okay, hold on. Now I got it to the next slide. Oh, here it is. This book was by Anne Frank. We call it Het Achterhuis. Here you call it Anne Frank's diary. And I read something about that she was now going to light the Chanukiah. And I don't know what it is about that sentence, but it jumped up to me, and I was like completely emotionally overwrought. And I felt like, I want to be Jewish. I mean, it just came out of the blue because I'd never met a Jew before. I knew nothing about Judaism. It's like, why on earth, right? But anyway, that's what happened. I kept this feeling. Oops, I'm sorry. Hold on. Sorry about that. Now, what is happening here? I'm sorry. Do you all see that thing called Apple Music? Is that what showed up on your screen? Because all of a sudden...
No, we don't see it.
I saw an Apple at the top.
Okay, good. Got it back. So I kept this feeling of wanting to be Jewish for the longest time. Finally, when I was in art school, I met 2 Jews in my class, and they both became my best friends. Although they both denied being Jewish, so that's like really, weird, typical almost.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, hi, Richard. And then when I moved to New York, of course, like in Manhattan, 1 out of every 7 people is Jewish. So now I met all these Jews, and I was like even more motivated. The yearning became very, very strong. But at the same time, I knew nothing about it still. I didn't know anything about the religion. I didn't know you could convert. This was all like news to me. And it stayed news for a while. In the meantime, I did have some experiences in my life that made me want to explore spirituality. And I went into a totally different path. I did a lot of Vipassana meditations, active meditations, all based on Eastern philosophies. And they were very helpful. But then one day I met the man who later became my husband. His name is Yehuda. And he came from a secular family, but he also started to get interested in Judaism. And he said, look, if we're ever going to be serious, then I want a Jewish household. So I started looking into what does that mean. And fortunately, at that time, since he was practically secular, it didn't mean very much. Like we had to go to synagogue twice a year, and I had to light candles Friday night. I thought, easy, and so in tune with what I want to do anyway. But I was still looking for like another way into what I called organized religion. So I found this book, Jewish Meditation by Aryeh Kaplan, and started reading it. Loved it. Then turns out that in Manhattan, there is a place called the Actors Temple. It happens to be that my husband's great-grandfather was one of the co-founders, but they offered Jewish meditation. So we decided, let's go and check it out. And it was very interesting. And it kind of got us deeper. And now fast forward another number of years, And I had decided to convert, and I took a whole class. And I actually converted twice to Judaism. The first time was with conservative Judaism, and then about 2 years later, Orthodox. So this is a painting that I did about my conversion. You see the bedin, the three men in black with their hats, etc., a woman dunking, and the fish, the whale kind of refers to my Hebrew name, Yona. So let me get to the next slide. Yeah. So I was still looking, however, to kind of unite my artist life and my Jewish life. And my Jewish life was very separate from everything. Like the synagogue where I now lived, I moved uptown. I didn't know many people there. People were very different from the easygoing downtown community that I was used to. The texts were, interesting, but they felt like stories to me, like stories about other people who were, somehow my forefathers and foremothers. But I was still looking for but how can I find myself in there? And then one day I found this text. It was in the Parsha, and it was about the Urim and Tumim. And I loved it. It was about how when we Jews were wandering in the desert, we got guidance from God, in the sense that the high priest would wear this thing around his shoulders. Here I'll have another picture of it, which we call the breastplate of judgment. It had 12 semi-precious stones, and each stone had the name of a tribe engraved in it. And in times of that one needed guidance, the high priest would meditate, and light would come through these stones, through the letters in these stones, and they would form a message. So I thought the whole thing was like just miraculous. And I immediately wanted to make art about it. So here's still a little bit more about how it's a metaphysical thing, etc. So this was the first painting I did. So I literally took like the idea of the stones. I wanted to show that these stones, which are hard, and how did you even get light through a stone, and also what can you imagine that happens? Like there is this enormous energy coming down from God. I imagine there's an enormous white light perhaps, and that then bursts through these letters. I thought, my goodness, there's so much going on here. So I made these stones like full of life, full of Sturm und Drang, because they embody the divine energy. And I also wanted to show that they had sort of the light shining through them. And for every stone, I only did a partial name. So this is Yehu, and then the Da is missing. I wanted to take that name, not just because my husband is named that way, but also someone else that was very important to me. My Jewish journey, her name was Yehudis. And also, it could stand for Yehudim, the word Jews. So I covered the whole thing with a sort of a resin that was high gloss. And so the whole thing looked like a stone. And I don't know, I can't use the pointer here, but you see all these little facets, on the right side. They really were meant to show like this is a stone. And then I did another one called Shimon. But then Shimon, my friend Shimon actually said, that's not how they wrote Hebrew in those days. That's the Hebrew that you have after we came back from Babylonia. Before that, it looked very different. So he showed me this. This is like a thing where you can see how these letters started. So I love like the top one. It's like an ox, Aleph. And then it started out on the left with an actual ox head. And then over the years in different cultures, it changes shape and then it rotates. And so in the area where it says Paleo Hebrew, that's the one, the alphabet that we Jews used when we were still living in, Canaan, as it were. So then I started to change the letters. So here is the tribe of Joseph in those letters. And here is one of my favorites, is the tribe of God. This is big. It's like 6 feet by 6 feet. And here it's like the universe in a way. It's like it's completely, the stones are out of control. They're swirling, they're twirling. I always I didn't do this consciously, but when I see it, it reminds me of Van Gogh's Starry Night. Van Gogh being, someone who grew up in my hometown. Here is another one, Tribe of God. So again, the light shining through was very important to me. And this is the modern day, the later version of Yehuda in the later script. So also my painting style evolved, because those paintings, the very early paintings, was the very first Jewish type or themed paintings I'd ever done. And I was really finding my way. While my own painterly style, which I had in my non-Jewish paintings, hadn't really come through yet. But now I was much more comfortable with the subject matter. So, everything is like twirling and, much more loose. So later on, like maybe 10 years after that, I collaborated with another artist, Katarzyna Kozera, and we did another series about the Urban Tumor, but now it was more about people wandering the land. Like what happened? We came into the land. The land was not friendly. The people that lived there didn't want to be overtaken, so we had to take the land by force. That's why you see some guns here and there. So that brings me, speaking of guns, to Kabbalah of Bling. I did a residency at Makor, which was a Dorfman-funded thing, really, really fun. And at that time, this is from like 2005, 2006, Kabbalah had become very popular, but also amongst people, like Madonna, and other pop culture icons. And in that way, it actually got distorted a little bit. People started to, follow movements in Kabbalah that weren't really true, Jewish, all kinds of stuff. So I started to make a series about people who are kind of lost in this contemporary world. Because when people have no guidance, no, let's say, divine guidance, then what do they go to, in order to feel powerful or safe? They may resort to, violence or stuff like that. Or they feel like if they just, gather enough money, that will make them safe. And, so I kind of wrote in there, in God we trust. It's all based on a coin. Because my whole point is, if you trust in God, if you trust in divine energy, however you want to call it, you are protected and life will be the way it's supposed to be. So to still stay on the spiritual, mystical side, this is what I did for the Amen Institute last year. This is Parsha Bechukotai, and it's about blessings and curses. The one on the left is actually curses, and it shows, it's hard to see, but it shows in the background a pool of water, and there's like a dead stick of, like a dead tree sticking out. And on the right, it's blessings, and it's like a desert landscape, and it looks, really beautiful. This is still an oldie, but I love the idea that this is in New York. I don't know if you all know about Times Square. It's like one of the busiest areas. It's where all the theaters are, all the billboards, lights, craziness. And there's this taxi driving through. There is this Hamsa shape that actually focuses on part of the buildings. And it just so happened that the billboard there said, "Look up." So my idea is, God is everywhere, even in Times Square. You just have to pay attention. So then, now we're going to the second part. First, we covered the mystical part, but then we came to the activist part. This is a photo. I don't have a better photo of it, but this is at the Yeshiva University Museum, where I had a piece about anti-Semitism in Europe. And this show was in 2018. It was a very small show. It was basically, a show, a vitrine, and then some other paintings. And at that time, people were like, really? Anti-Semitism? I mean, at that time, people were still far removed from the idea that we Jews could actually be actively experiencing anti-Semitism. But I, had my contacts in Europe, and there it was already rampant. So it was a little bit ahead of its time, I think. So here is a piece that I did for Amsterdam, and it was for an exhibition called Stations of the Cross. So it was, it's actually conceived by a Jewish curator, but this particular show was curated by Christian curators. And the idea was that it was in Amsterdam, and the theme was troubled waters, and you are supposed to, take some aspect of Amsterdam. So I chose two. I chose the past, which is on the left side, where, almost more percentage-wise, more people were picked up in World War II and brought to death camps than anywhere else in Europe. And on the right, we have human trafficking, sex trafficking, which was, rampant at that time. Now, these had little hidden videos in them. It's called augmented reality. I had an iPad there, so viewers could take the iPad, and depending on where they looked, they could see different videos popping up. And this particular group was like 15 people, and they were, what do you call them? People who were learning to become Protestant clergy, basically. So it was a very different audience than I'm usually used to, but really very gratifying. So this is where the activist part came in officially, in the sense that this is, again, back in the day, Richard McBee, who was on this call, he actually coined the word activist. Otherwise, it never would even occur to me. This is a project about the Eeuw, and the Eeuw is like a very thin line that creates like a boundary, an artificial boundary for Shabbat. It's symbolic, really, and it allows people inside that boundary to carry stuff. So, for instance, if you are a mother and you need to carry your baby, or and something like that, you can do that if you live within the Eeuw. But I was invited, one of 4 artists, to make a piece, and I lived on the Lower East Side, where there was no Eruv. Didn't affect me, but I had tons of friends for whom it affected a lot. So I made this kind of little mini Eruv made with the same type of wires, and I created these panels that are all based on details of synagogues on the Lower East Side. So on the bottom left, there is the window that famous artist Kiki Smith made for the Eldridge Street Museum. And in the middle, there's a fish. It's part of a synagogue that I was a member of, the Stanton Street Shul. And you could walk around it. And then inside it were 2 little monitors. I don't know if you can see them, but I had interviewed people like, what do you think of the fact that there is no Eruv? And all those interviews were being broadcast, and you could also read them, and Cynthia Beth Rubin helped me put that together. And here's another view of it. And that brought us to a whole other series, which I'm not really going to go into, but Cynthia and I then worked together on a whole series about the Lower East Side, the synagogue, the Stanton Street Shul, and then we created all these other images around it. So this here is a old fresco type at the Stanton Street Shul, and then to the right is the image that we made, inspired by it. And then I'm not sure, how am I doing for time? Okay, let me look.
Great.
Okay, I just want to make sure how much time I have before. Oh, okay, I better hurry up. Okay, so here is the month of Sivan, which stands for twins. Just a little detail. And then one of these pieces, the one on the left, the banner, was shown at the Jerusalem Biennale. And that was the first time, I think, that we used augmented reality videos. So on the right, you see these 2 hands that happen to belong to Siona Benjamin. Some of you know her. And she's holding up the iPad, and a little video pops up because that was what was embedded in that particular piece. Okay, and then that's morphed into yet another project that we're still working on, Zodiacs on the Lower East Side. We got involved with a web designer. And so what happens is you can go there, and then you can, if you click on, let's say, the month of Cheshvan, then you get a page. And this is just a detail of it, and it gives you information about the month. And then you can hover over the images, and then little videos pop up on your screen. So you can do the whole thing from your computer. Okay, so the most recent activist piece is Living Waters, Mayim Chaim. I've become very concerned about the pollution in the oceans. And I used to be a scuba diver. I mean, not for profession, but for fun. And I've seen how things have deteriorated. So I started making, I'm in the process of making an installation. This is just a tiny little piece of it, and it's right now at the Heller Museum in New York City. It's what we call a tzedek globe. It is part of a whole other project called tzedek boxes. But what a lot of people don't know is that in Judaism, there's a big tradition and a lot of text about the environment. So my plan is to make this installation and to not just exhibit it in galleries and museums, but to really take it out into the streets to all kinds of neighborhoods, Jewish and non-Jewish. And we'll have these panels that are painted that depict the problem. Here, for instance, this is one of them. This is a piece that shows a crab that is trapped, a little red crab at the bottom. It's trapped in this plastic bag. This is a small painting. I'm also going to do some really big ones. And there will be, one of the paintings will have augmented reality videos that will give resources, like what can we do? Or it will give text like, this is what the rabbi said, or this is what so-and-so said, and this is, Jewish tradition. Because there are a lot of Jewish communities that don't necessarily are so concerned with this. Like maybe we all are, but there are a lot of different types of Jewish communities. And I thought, I want to take it to them, to the places where they walk every day. So I'm planning to, at some point when I get the funding, to create like enormous banners and hang these as an installation on, let's say, the gates of a park where people walk by, and then they can use their phone or not. They don't have to. They'll get enough info even without a phone. And then this is the piece that I wanted to conclude with. Again, it's a sculptural painting, which is something I really enjoy doing. And it's for an exhibition coming up, which Richard has been working on frantically with Joel Silverstein, the other curator. And it's called Genesis. It's the graphic behind me. And this is my take on Genesis. And God saw it was good. So the eye of God. Let me see, do I have anything else? Oh yeah, so this is the graphic. If any of you are in New York, we'd love to see you. We have an opening tomorrow night. We have one on May 11, which is next week, where I will be also moderating a panel called The Role of the Feminine in the Secular and the Sacred, with 4 different panelists, a Hindu, a Jew, a Christian, and a Muslim. So this whole concept that Joel and Richard came up with is extraordinary because it brings together all these different faith communities, primarily Hindus, Christians, Jews, and secular people. And they all take like the first 4 chapters of the creation narratives and created like this wildly different art. And Richard will do his panel at the Jewish Theological Seminary on June 1st. And in case you were concerned about it being churches, the Riverside Church, we're not in the church, we're in the lobby. We're nowhere near the actual church entrance itself. And the Interchurch Center, in spite of its name, is not a church. It's a center for church groups, but there is no church. That is sort of it. If anybody has questions, I'd love to address them.
How did you implement all the videos into your art? Did you use a software, or did you like take a picture of it and then tell something that this is the video I want when someone looks at this?
Okay, so first the video is made, and then we used a software that since then has unfortunately gone out of business. It was an augmented reality app, and it was really easy to use, and it was free. So we knew it was almost too good to be true. So that's now out of business. Now there are other apps. I think Art Vive is one of them. So when I start this series, I will either use that, the Art Viva app, even though it's very expensive for me, not for the viewer, or another option is to just make it very simple, and then on one of the paintings have a QR code. And if people hold their iPhone, on the QR code, this video will show up. So that would be like an easy way to do it. So I haven't decided yet which one.
We have a question from Rivka and then Richard afterwards.
Hi. So first of all, I just wanted to say I was so impressed by your presentation and all of your work, both using your art for activism and inspiring a message in viewers. I love that. My question is, so you use a lot of different artistic mediums to create your art and your message. You showed us like this thing with the arrow that was like 3D. You have the paintings and you have the one that's right up here. I was wondering which medium is your favorite and why?
I love them all, Rivka. That's why I use them all. So right now, the space that I am in right now, I really love the kind of sculptural paintings, the ones that you're looking at right now. But also, I just love installations. Like what I didn't tell you, a whole lot about the Mayim Chayim, but it also is going to have like a huge floor cloth where as if you're walking on the ocean, and then when you're walking with your iPhone, I'm going to embed things while you're walking on the sea ocean, or stuff like that. So I love everything. The common thread is that I want it to be immersive, that it's not just a picture on the wall, although there is nothing wrong with that. But I personally love that people can engage with it somehow. They can walk into it, or see the video, whatever. That's what interests me. Does it answer your question?
So yes. So just to clarify, you're saying it's not about the medium, it's about the experience of the medium that's important to you, and just making it immersive. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And for a while, I was a little worried, like, I'm all over the place. Sometimes it helps for an artist to have a certain style and just stick with it, for many, many years. So it becomes like a recognizable thing. But there's this art critic, Jerry Saltz. I don't agree with his politics, but whatever he says about art is so profound. And he's, in a way, a very spiritual person. And he said, artists, just keep doing what you're doing. Don't ever think like you have to have a certain style. Do what comes to you, do what motivates you, wherever your passion leads you, go there. And I so believe in that. So. Thanks.
Richard.
Hi, I've somehow lost the images in front of me. Anyway, Yona, congratulations. Beautiful presentation, to say the least. I didn't realize that your Urim and Thummim set of paintings was the first time you really plunged in to serious Jewish content. I wish I was actually just trying to look for the date, but I wrote the first review that I reviewed your work in on those paintings. And it was very exciting. It was a small gallery downtown. I can't remember where it was, but anyway, it was exciting to encounter the paintings, but I had no idea this was your premiere.
Well, actually, they had premiered, 3 of them had premiered in a huge show in Dumbo with a whole bunch of other artists for the Russian American Cultural Center. And there it was in the midst of all these other totally non-Jewish paintings. Mm-hmm. And the surprise was I sold a lot of work there to people who had no idea what it was. They didn't care. They just loved the colors. They felt transported somehow. And I thought, so that was a good start, Richard. I'm like, wow, I just completely, because that curator had invited me to participate in a show based on my previous work. And then 3 months for the show, I called her up. I said, Regina, I all of a sudden feel this urge to make Jewish themed paintings. Do you trust me? Can I make them? Can I put them in a show? She said, yes, I don't even need to see them. Just make them. So that was good. And then I sold a whole bunch of prints and paintings. So that was a very good start. Not indicative of a lot of stuff that happened later, but so yeah.
Right. Well, fantastic. Anyway, it brings back memories. Do you remember what year that was?
It must have been like 2002, something like
Yeah,
that.
that sounds right. That sounds right. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Only 20 years ago. 21 years ago. Wowee. Okay,
Yeah.
line way. Congratulations on the work, to say the least.
Thank you.
Tina, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just have an observation, Yona. In your work that was part of the SEDEC, it looked like it was the round. Yes. No, go back. There, that one. I just love this piece. And as you were describing it, at first I really didn't know what I was looking at, and I had realized it was a plastic bag. And then, then seeing that there was this crab underneath it, but it was really the shape of the bag that I was looking at, and it looked like a bird to me. And just, thinking about what, SEDEC is all about, and it's just, sort of that release. I mean, it just had a very different personal meaning for me, and I just wanted to share that.
Oh, thank you. I love that. Now I'm always going to see a bird in a tube.
That's right.
Tina.
Yeah, that's the elephant in the room now. I'm sorry about that.
Wow. Well, everyone, thank you, Yona, for sharing and for kind of bringing all of these presentations to a head. A round of applause to Yona and to all of our mentors. This has been such an incredible experience. From January till May, I feel like we've all transformed in so many ways. And also, it's really great that we got to see a lot of imagery of the Stanton Street Shul, because all of your work is going to be exhibited there. So, and the work from this project. So that's
really?
exciting.
Oh,
The students' work is going to be exhibited at the Oh, that is great. Wow.
So I don't want to take more time from your precious mentoring, but it's just it's been a very heartfelt experience to see all that's transpired in really the last 4 or 5 months. Okay. The breakout rooms, I just had it here.